Chapter 8 will be about receivables. And from what I've already taught you, that basically means when somebody owes you money. For this clarification, receivables is any money that is owed to you from any organization. It's normally from accounts receivable, or it could be notes receivable. And we're going to learn in this chapter about notes receivable. Notes receivable will happen when a customer who owes you money cannot pay you and they offer to sign a note. So we're going to talk about accounts receivables first. This is the way most people do business, selling the balance sheet, and usually the terms are 30 days and you collect the money. There is no interest attached to it. However, notes receivable is more of a formal document. When somebody owes you money, they will sign a note. They'll often pay you over a period of 60, 90, or 120 days. And often interest is attached to a notes receivable. I believe we've seen that in chapter 7 when we were doing the bank reconciliation. So often it's when a customer's accounts receivable cannot pay you, they will actually sign a notes receivable offering to pay you over a longer period of time, but with interest also. There are some other types of receivables. We're not going to get too much involved in them, but there is interest receivable up here and taxes receivable. But we're mostly going to focus on when customers owe you money and they do not pay you. Okay? And so the whole thing is when they don't pay you, your accounts receivable is considered uncollectible. It's called an uncollectible receivable. Now, a lot of companies are going to write that off, and we're going to talk about that in this chapter. But you can actually, let me back that up. A business can actually sell their accounts receivable to actually get money today. So if I had $100,000 worth of receivables, I could sell it to another company, and this is called factoring my receivables. Okay? So basically, I'm selling my receivables to someone else, the $100,000, maybe perhaps for $90,000, which means I get $90,000 today, but it costs me $10,000 to get that money now instead of waiting for the 30 days. So this is an option when you have receivables that you could factor them, but most of the time, small companies do not do this type of thing. But no matter how careful you are as far as checking a business's credit, sometimes your credit sales will not be collected. And so I'm introducing a brand new account called bad debt expense, or I like to call it BDE. And this is basically when somebody cannot pay you. Now, the best way to know when a customer cannot pay you is they don't return your calls. The accounts receivable is past due, they owe you money, and they do not return any calls. You might try going by their place of business and find out it might actually be shut down. So this is how you know when a business is not going to pay you. Now, there's no time frame on this, and it's truly up to each business owner as to decide when is this receivable not going to be collected. Because remember, this is your accounts receivable. It shows on the balance sheet as an asset. And if you're not going to collect this money, you are overstating your assets on your balance sheet. So there is no time frame on you as a business owner when you say, hey, this customer is not going to pay me. But when you do determine they're not going to pay, there's going to be two different types of methods of writing them off. So here we talk about these two different types of methods. This is just for writing off accounts receivable when I determine I will not get money. The first one is called direct write-off method, okay? And when I actually determine that the account is going to be uncollectible, and that could be 6 months, it could be 9 months, it could be a year, I just simply write it off my books, and I write it off to bad debt expense. So that way, again, as soon as you determine that you're not going to collect, you simply write it off. It's a very easy way to do. The other method is called the allowance method. And what happens there is I actually set aside a value attached to my accounts receivable that I know I will not collect. And the reason I know I will not collect it is because from previous historical data. If last year I had $200,000 in accounts receivable, there might be $50,000. I'm sorry, no, that's kind of high. How about $15,000 that I did not collect, or maybe 5%. So by historical data, I know that I will not collect all of my money. When it comes to choosing which method you're going to use, the write-off method is for very small companies who don't have a lot of receivables, but the allowance method is for anybody using the gap principles. Most of the time, these are for the corporations. So my next few videos, we're going to actually show how to do the journal entries for write-off method and the allowance method.